what it's really like being a yoga teacher. Yeah?
Yeah, I think that's a good question.
And when I was thinking about this subject, I thought there was just an incident that came to my mind when I was first going to my teacher here in Letchworth. And one day I met that teacher in Morrison's. And part of me thought, wow, my yoga teacher shops in Morrison's. And isn't that a strange thing to think? When I look back on it now, I think, why would my teacher not shop in Morrison's or anywhere else? It wasn't specifically Morrison's. Other supermarkets are available, but you know, it was the idea that she was just doing normal family shopping, and I thought, well, what did I think that she was going to do instead? You know, it's not like you can survive without shopping. Or you're going to sort of float along in a cloud and
that's what I was just thinking.
The food will arrive.
Maybe she cultivates all her food at home, well, you know, maybe that's...
Living on mainly grass grown in pots on the windowsill or whatever. But it kind of made me think about how sometimes people can think about yoga teachers as, you know, kind of elevated and special and, you know, different from everyone else. I've just got that image of being surprised, you know.
I think within that, like as you say, maybe, you know, maybe the image of a yoga teacher being very cool, calm, collected, having everything together, and being very organised. And
nothing ever goes wrong.
Yes, or bothers them.
No, nothing ever bothers them, definitely. No, and yeah, nothing really ever happens in their life because they've got everything together.
And I mean, dare I say, I actually see this quite a lot. I belong to quite a few different Facebook yoga teacher groups, and you'll hear sometimes like a post and then there's some comments and then there's a lot of, well, that's not very yogi of you, you know. And we're human.
Absolutely.
You know, and we're not always going to be always yogi and very yogi, and we're going to make mistakes and we're going to do things that, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, I shouldn't have done that. So yeah,
we experience all those sort of normal human emotions, don't we? You know, we get sad, we get angry. You know, and I think in a way it's a strange idea that a human being wouldn't experience those emotions. You know, yoga doesn't stop you from experiencing emotions.
And nor should it.
And nor should it.
And nor should it.
Exactly.
I think for me, it's, as you say, these are normal human emotions that we will experience. How yoga benefits me is being a tool and a resource to sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes better handle that emotional turbulence. You know, I find it kind of maybe like a nice reassuring that I know this is going to pass, or this is normal, I can be compassionate here, those sorts of things.
And also kind of self-awareness. You know, that's a really big benefit of yoga practice, isn't it? Self-awareness, that, you know, you can feel those things and then you can observe yourself feeling those things. And, you know, like you say, you might think this is going to pass, I know this is going to pass, but you can also almost get a sort of helicopter viewpoint where you're able to zoom out a little bit and see things in a bit more perspective. Most of the time that will help and it will work, but not always. You know, people have things that are overwhelming, don't they, in their lives?
Of course,
and, you know, but it is interesting how many people think that, yes, you're sort of floating along on a cloud and everything is lovely all the time. Or that yoga makes everything lovely all the time somehow.
Yeah, and I think that's a real important myth to actually bust. And one of my teachers, she regularly says it, that it was like both a revelation and a liberation, that when she was in a yoga class, that her teacher says, you don't have to like your practice. And she was like, oh my God, that was so freeing, because it can be tough, can't it? As we know, to be with ourselves, to slow down, and, you know, things can rise. And actually sometimes we don't like the practice, we don't like what we're doing. And having that permission, because I think, as you say, if you perhaps you might give yoga a bit of a disservice if you're not floating out your class and feeling like you're, 10 pounds lighter of emotional baggage. Yeah. And sometimes we do walk out and we are like, that I do feel so much better. But sometimes, it's not that expectation that it should be a certain way, because it's not always going to be that.
No, it's true. I'm reminded of my friend Ellen's comment, which has recently been repeated by one of the graduates on our last TT course, and I kind of liked the way that had been recycled. It had been brought up again as a point, but this idea that yoga's a bit like having a big stick and stirring up a pond. And sometimes stuff comes up from the bottom of the pond. It's not all the sort of, the lily pads on the top. There's other stuff underneath. We're going to have a mixture of responses to our yoga practice, aren't we? And it might be fantastic, and we might feel amazing, and then other times we might feel like it's brought up something that we've been perhaps sitting on or holding on to. I mean, something like a yin yoga practice, in a way you're trying to encourage a release, aren't you, of some of those things, those issues in the tissues.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting. So what do you think, are there other myths about teaching yoga, about being a yoga teacher? I've got one. You've got to be really flexible.
Yes. Oh yeah, you can't teach yoga if you're not bendy.
Super flexible.
Super flexible.
Yeah. In fact, let us just show you. No.
Yes, that is. I mean, you get it. Oh, I'd love to try yoga, but I can't. I'm not flexible.
Yeah.
I'm not bendy enough.
Yeah.
And I guess there's that view of teachers that you should be able to do all the things and look a certain way, and that's just not true.
No, and not realistic.
And
really.
and not realistic. Not realistic at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a big myth, I think, but one that is very well perpetuated.
Yeah.
And also perhaps along that same vein is that you're super healthy and super fit, and you're constantly doing all the things to look after your body.
And it reminded me that the idea of being super flexible, again with the same teacher that I saw in Morrison's all those years ago, I asked about teaching yoga. I said, and I think I might have said, do you have to be very flexible to teach yoga? Because again, that is a sort of kind of concept, isn't it? You think, well, I've got to be able to do these things, these really, more extreme things, because that's what doing yoga is. And my teacher said to me, you've got to be very dedicated. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
And maybe that flexibility isn't simply like a physical thing, but actually flexible in mind, because we all have limitations, and it may be that, as a teacher, you don't teach what you can't do. Some people have that rule, but some people teach things that they don't do, and there's that flexibility on that, isn't there? And being flexible in your attitude to your classes and how you might theme that.
And the people that are coming to your classes. And how their bodies might take on the shapes that you're sharing with them. There's got to be flexibility around that, actually, hasn't there? Because we all look different. In those shapes.
Find in different ways. Yeah, that is an interesting one, and I think it's not probably helped by social media, is it? And by by the imagery that we have of yoga teachers and of yoga poses. So you can kind of see where some of that comes from, and in fact, I guess as yoga teachers, if we're using images, finding a good representation of different body types and sizes and colours, abilities, different variations of poses. Doing things on a chair, I guess, that all helps, doesn't it?
It's got to be a lot more inclusive, hasn't it, really? I mean, I can think of several very good yoga books that I've got, but the covers have got people, usually young, white, thin women, doing quite extreme things. And if you're able to see past that and go, well, actually, I know that isn't what yoga's all about. I'm going to go in. Often, what's inside the book isn't like that. So I feel it's a shame in a way that is the representation.
And that's what draws us. Ultimately, if the word yoga is over the body image of somebody like that, for some people that's a simple scroll, because that's not me. I'm not represented in that. And like you say, maybe not unless you know and you've been, or you've been to a class, or you know what yoga is. So
so some work to do there, isn't there?
Yeah. What else is it like? It's a lot more. I mean, I guess it depends on. Here's something I think is like teaching yoga and the business of yoga. And again, like there is, depending on how you decide to teach, it might be that it's a little add-on to your job. You want to do a couple of classes a week and share it, and it's not your main income, to it being your full-time job and being your main income. And yes, being a business. And there is that, you often hear these two ideas kind of bucking heads sometimes, the spiritual aspect of yoga and the service of yoga and the giving of yoga and the earning money and running a business of yoga. And it's, there is a lot more behind the scenes than what our students will see. Our students will see us teaching classes. And if they come to once a week classes, it's their one time a week that they see you. But behind that one class a week, there's an awful lot of work that goes on, isn't there?
Going on, yeah, it's true. And not everybody is suited to or enjoys that. So you do get people, don't you, who say, oh, well, I really love the teaching, but, and there is admin to do. You've got to keep records, you've got to keep in touch with people, you've obviously got to keep financial records as well,
There's a lot,
There's a lot, so there is a lot to do. And it probably helps if you're organised. So
marketing, and there's a lot of marketing, getting yourself out there, putting yourself out there, keeping things current and fresh, and kind of, I guess, looking after the people that you already have, as well as then trying to attract new people. So I think perhaps that's another kind of, not myth, but I guess just a hidden thing that's maybe not seen. I comment on it all the time. I was like, I didn't know I had to be a web designer, and ad marketing, know how to market my things, keep my own books, all that kind of thing. It's a lot more than teaching a class.
Yeah, and I think relationship as well with the people that you got in your classes, over a period of time, particularly if you kind of seeing them regularly over years. You become involved in things that are going on in their lives. You might end up giving them support in the background one way or another. People will often ask for advice. So during the course of a day, being a teacher, you might teach one class, but you might be doing accounting, you might be doing social media, you might be answering emails, helping people with inquiries about stuff, you might be talking on the phone to somebody. So there's a sort of whole load of other different things. I actually started keeping a list one day. In fact, I was going to talk about it on the teacher training course, and we didn't kind of get to that, but I started writing down, these are the things that I'm doing during the course of this day, just to sort of show a typical day where there was perhaps one or two classes and the rest was different things.
And it is no different. Like I said, it depends how you're running that business. I mean, there is going to be, whether you're even doing one class or two classes, there's still standard things that you have to do, like the record keeping, the sequencing, the aftercare, all that kind of thing. So there is a lot. I guess leading on from that, another thing, like what's it really like being a yoga teacher, is there is a lot of scope within that. You know, there are a lot of things that you can specialise in, delve a little bit deeper into, isn't there? It's again many different styles of yoga, and there's many different ways of teaching that. And I think the yoga world has boomed, really. There's so much now, isn't there? You know, yoga for cancer and
children's
yogas, teenage yoga, menopause yoga, yoga for athletes. So there is a lot of scope there to develop your own particular interest or to niche in a particular way, which is a really, really great thing. And good for your evolution as well. You know, maybe you start off with a beginner's class and you know, you want to get your experience quite solid. You teach maybe open classes or different classes, but then as you go on, and there's so much kind of different courses that you can do and trainings.
Well, it's definitely an ongoing journey, isn't it? And I think our you know, our teacher training graduates from September, having completed the course, realised that this is just the beginning, you know.
Well, we had a conversation, didn't we, about their interests, and actually, you know, there was quite a few differences about, you know, when we did, it was on the business and marketing part of the module, and the different areas that you could go into, which generated quite a lot of discussion about how they would see themselves setting up and who they would see themselves teaching.
Yeah, which is good. It is good.
Yeah, because you might not want to teach a certain population, or maybe you do. Maybe that's the only sort of population. Maybe you want to be a yoga teacher. I've taught in care homes. Maybe you just want to be a yoga teacher that goes into care homes and teaches chair yoga, for example. So, yes.
Yeah, loads of options, definitely.